Monday, 7:30 a.m. Your teacher just uploaded an assignment due Friday, 11:59 p.m. And the first thing that comes to your mind is, oh, a new assignment. Can't they give us a break? Although you feel annoyed by the new work you have to do, you're also relieved because it's not due until Friday, which means you have all week to complete it. Except you're not going to start or even open the assignment until Friday, 11 p.m. because during your free time, you decided to finally finish the book you're reading, you finally took your golden retriever out for a walk, and you finally reorganized your room. By this point, you're tired, frustrated, angry, overwhelmed, and all you want to do is get this homework over with. By 11:55, you manage to finish and upload your work. You're so exhausted that you promise you'll never do it again, because you know that A, you could have done a better job, and B, you could have avoided feeling so exhausted if you had just started working earlier. But hey, you did read, you exercised, organized, and finished your homework. So that's something. Now, let me confess something to you. The majority of the time, that is my world and my thought process every time I get assigned more work. And I'm pretty sure that's your world too, because I've been there. You've been there. We have all been there. You probably have an idea now of how the issue I'll be talking about will specifically look like. But before starting, let's clear things up. Procrastination. What is it with that word that it seems to be present all the time? 3 words: delaying, avoiding, distracting. Those are the 3 most common words associated with procrastination. And that's exactly it. So postponing on purpose a chore, an assignment, and even the slight less responsibility, like responding to an email, is procrastination. But what if I told you that you can find productiveness in procrastination? To understand the very nature of procrastination, we need to learn about its roots. And for that, let's go back in time to ancient Greece. Plato was a remarkable philosopher who seized life based on the values of beauty, justice, and equality. And although there were no X-rays back then, he came up with an analogy to understand how the human brain works. Plato described the brain tends to be in a constant internal clash, like a carriage being pulled by 2 horses that sometimes work together, but sometimes don't. Now, enough of ancient Greece. Fast forward to the 19th and 20th century, Austrian neurologist Sigmund Freud continued this analogy by comparing the brain to a horse and a rider. The horse being the drive and desire, and the rider being the common sense. In his analogy, the horse corresponds to the limbic system, and the rider to the prefrontal cortex. The limbic system is the part of the brain responsible for behavioral and emotional responses, such as pleasure-seeking. Meanwhile, the prefrontal cortex is needed during more complex behaviors, like decision-making and planning. This right here is important because turns out procrastination is pretty much in our nature. The prefrontal cortex is less developed, so the limbic system tends to gain control, and you start to practice activities that make you happy instead of those you need to do. And what does it all result in? Yep, you guessed it, procrastination. Now that we know that our brains are designed to postpone tasks, let's look at another factor that influences procrastination. Motivation. It is one of the most important human driving forces, which makes it have a major impact on procrastination. To understand this more, let's look at expectancy, value, and time. The 3 key particularities of motivation according to industrial psychologist Dr. Piers Steel. If I were to ask you, would you rather complete an assignment in which you know you're gonna get an excellent grade, or complete an assignment in which you know you're gonna get the minimum passing grade, you're probably going to answer you'll do the first assignment. Why is this? Well, when expecting a rewarding outcome from an activity, you'll be filled with self-confidence and you'll be eager to do it. Whereas when you know things aren't gonna go so great, you'll try to avoid it. This expectancy connects to how valuable an activity is to us. I mean, who'd want to do an irritating and unpleasant task? I certainly would not. And this is why the value we give to an activity is crucial when deciding whether to do it or not. Lastly, we've got time. When talking about how humans interpret time, it can be broadly separated into past, present, and future. To understand the relationship between time and procrastination, Dr. Steele presents an idea of how the human interprets the present and the future. He states that we see tomorrow's goals abstractly, but days are seen as immediate. This means that the future is rather seen as generalized and less specific, but the now is particularized and detailed. This has an important impact on due dates because a distant deadline increases delay and makes us believe we got plenty of time to complete it. But at the end of the day, this activity is done a day or even hours before it's due. I can't even begin to tell you the amount of times this has happened to me. And the worst part is that I know that I have to work, and that if I don't work, I'll regret it later. There are many ways of approaching procrastination, but for now, I'll be focusing on what I like to call productive procrastination, which is basically being productive while still procrastinating. Pretty ironic, huh? Yeah, I know, but I'm living proof of it, and you're probably living proof of it too. Although I am no expert whatsoever in the study of procrastination, I am an expert at procrastinating. And turns out I am not the only one who's ever thought about productive procrastination. In fact, Dr. John Perry, a philosopher professor in Stanford University, described the strategy used by procrastinators to take advantage of this unfavorable trait to be structured procrastination. What is structured procrastination and how does it work? Well, when compiling a list of tasks from most to least important, the procrastinator will do the ones at the bottom to avoid doing the ones at the top, which means that to an extent, the procrastinator is being productive. Just as in structured procrastination, the basis for productive procrastination is doing some activities to avoid others, but it is mainly focused on academics, because I, as a 17-year-old high schooler, procrastinate the most in school. Let me give you an example. If I have work A due Tuesday and work B due Friday, I'll start doing work A, get tired of it, and end up finishing work B, although A is more important because it's due before. Of course, I end up finishing work A Tuesday 11 p.m., but now I have completed not one, but 2 assignments out of the countless amount of homework I have to do. Productive or structured procrastination is a little mind trick you can play on your brain in order to be productive and at the same time procrastinate. Another good way of dealing with procrastination is by making each task more approachable. This is achieved by separating the whole activity into small subtasks instead of a big one. For example, if you have to write an essay, instead of approaching the whole thing at the same time, approach it by paragraphs, and those paragraphs by sentences, and those sentences by words. The key here is to understand that the completion of what appears to be a small task is actually a big win. We have now broken down the concept of procrastination. We've been able to see how our brains are programmed to procrastinate, how motivation and its derivatives affect our willingness to complete a task, and how you can take advantage of this so-called unfavorable trait. You can trick your mind into believing that you're procrastinating when in reality you're being productive. This is why I want to invite you to try productive procrastination and deceive your brain into believing that by completing other assignments, you're procrastinating the completion of the most important one. This way, each task will be more approachable and it'll be easier for you to do them, which can help you avoid feel so exhausted, tired, frustrated, angry, overwhelmed. Isn't that something that sounds so relieving? Now that I have presented all these ideas to you, I want you to understand that the small activities you might complete in a day are in fact not small nor insignificant, but on the contrary, they have a big impact when trying to overcome procrastination. By making minor changes to your daily routine, you too can take advantage of procrastination. And no matter how big or small these changes might appear to be proud of yourself and keep going. Remember, I've been there. You've been there. We have all been there. Thank you.